Hello Internet, welcome back to Tromsø Twilight, the channel where I, Vincent, talk to you, the Internet, the universe, the cosmos, about books, movies, music that I find interesting, that I enjoy, or a combination of the two. And today I'm going to be talking about the fact that last weekend on Saturday I saw Smashing Pumpkins playing live in Trondheim at the music festival Stereo, which has a silent P at the beginning if you would like to Google it. I'm going to be talking a little bit about Smashing Pumpkins' career and my relationship to them for the first part of this video. And in the second part of the video, I am going to describe the concert. So if you just want to hear about the concert, skip ahead. All right, so in the mid 90s, around 95, I was 13, 14. And at the same time, the album Melancholy and the Infinite Sadness came out by Smashing Pumpkins. This was their third studio album, and it was the first time that I really heard about them. I vividly remember seeing the video for Bullet with Butterfly Wings on MTV before the album came out. This was the first single. It is the one that famously starts with the words, "The world is a vampire," and it was like amazing to me. I was a kid who'd been into um, prog rock like Genesis, early Genesis, and Pink Floyd, um, and who also was into like Nirvana and alternative rock at that time. And this music seemed like a really like unique combination of the two. I got the album Melancholy when it came out. I listened to it constantly, and they definitely became my favorite band for a period of a year or two. When this album came out, went back and bought everything that had been released by them. That included like a VHS video, some EPs and singles, but there were also two main albums. There was Gish, their first album. Now Gish is like a kind of early 90s version of a psychedelic rock album. It's kind of Jimi Hendrix influenced. It's got a lot of like crazy guitar solos on it. It sounds really beautiful at the same time as it has this kind of driving aggression of rock music, but it doesn't sound angry. Then their second album, Siamese Dream. This is an album where Billy Corgan, the main songwriter, consciously tried to kind of combine sort of goth rock and alternative rock of the 90s and with shoegaze. Much of the album has these kind of fuzzy guitar beds through the music. Like I believe he put like between 60 and 100 guitar tracks down on a lot of the songs. Back in the day, it sounded like really unique and kind of very sort of immersive. That sound of like a million guitars all like fuzzing together with distortion has now over the years become the kind of alternative 90s radio rock sound, but at the time it was very innovative. And what makes a difference is that the drummer Jimmy Chamberlin was such a kind of creative, skilled drummer who he was originally a jazz musician, and it really kind of lifts that music up above what would otherwise kind of just maybe be like a sort of very fuzzy, messy sound. There was also an album called Pisces Iscariot, which was a combination of sort of B-sides and radio sessions and different things that they'd done. So it was more stripped down, less kind of studio based. It gave you kind of maybe a sense of what they sounded like as a live band. So this was when kind of I really loved them, was like right bang in the middle of the 90s, and I was really like obsessively trying to listen to everything they'd ever recorded. Now like a real brief history of the band, they got together in 1988, and it was originally uh, Billy Corgan and the other guitarist James Ihar who started the band, and they wanted it to be like a sort of goth rock kind of sound like The Cure or Susie and the Banshees or something. And they recruited a bass player, Darcy Rexy, and then the three of them started playing with Jimmy Chamberlin, the drummer. And these four musicians were like the core band right up until Melancholy and the Infinite Sadness. However, later people found out that a lot of the bass playing and a lot of the guitar playing was actually done by Billy Corgan on the first two albums. So Melancholy and the Infinite Sadness is the album which is kind of maybe most representative of the whole band. Like everybody played on it. The whole band were involved in arranging it. It's like a double album with like really vast musical variation. And to me, it's still their best and most defining album. But maybe that's because it's the first one I fell in love with. Just to say a little about what happened after that, on the tour for Melancholy and Infinite Sadness, the drummer Jimmy Chamberlin overdosed on heroin with the live keyboard player, and the keyboard player died. Jimmy Chamberlin was subsequently sacked from the band, and the three remaining members went on to make an album called Adore, with where they used more drum machines and loops, and they also had another drummer that played with them. Um, that album's good. Billy Corgan and the bass player Darcy then fell out with each other quite badly, and she left the band during the recording of their next album, Machina and Machines of the Gods. But the drummer came back, Jimmy Chamberlin came back. So you've got these two albums where it's like one member is missing or only like half in. They are still really good albums, but to me, they're not as good as the first three or that compilation Pisces Iscariot. So yeah. After Machina, the band broke up. They came back in 2012, but actually it was only Billy Corgan, and he played for a while with other musicians, still playing under the name, released quite a few albums. I didn't like any of the material that this version of the Smashing Pumpkins put out, but in 2020, Jimmy Chamberlin, and James Iha were together again, and they made an album which I believe it's called CYR, but it might be called Cure. It's like written in capital letters CYR. It's a kind of post-punk electronic pop album, and I really like it. So that's 2020. Last year they came out with a new album which is like a heavy rock, very riff oriented album called Agora Mori Mai. And this album to me sounds, out of everything they've done, the most like their first album, Gish. I have some misgivings about it. Like, to me, the vocals are mixed too far forward in the mix. It would sound better if they were further back, like they are on Gish. But I like this album a lot. I listened to it a lot, and it made me kind of rediscover the band. And after all these years, kind of enjoyed their old music again, and be reminded of what an inspiring band they were to me when I was young. So, all this to say that I was super excited when they announced that they were playing in Norway. They were playing at a music festival, so I travelled to Trondheim to see them, and I'm here to tell you about the show. When the Smashing Pumpkins came out on stage, there were five of them. Billy Corgan, he still has a shaved head like he did in the late 90s. He's wearing like a long kind of smock type thing, which had like a black and white design looking like a forest, either tight pants or like stockings on underneath with like slightly heeled shoes with pointy toes, looking like super weird, super gothic. James Iha looking very stylish in a suit. I couldn't see Jimmy Chamberlin from where I was, so the main band, they were like in the middle and to the right, like if you're in the audience looking at the stage. On the left, two live touring members, Jack Bates, the bass player, who I believe is the son of Peter Hook from New Order, and Kiki Wong, who is a live guitarist with them. She is like super excited, energetic on stage. She's wearing like a kind of like sort of sparkly rock star type outfit, clapping all the time she's not playing guitar. She was doing a lot of like the rhythm guitar stuff, but she did get to go do a little bit of solo work right towards the end. Very, very enjoyable live performer. So they came out, they played this song called Glass Theme. For those of you who like know the Smashing Pumpkins lore, there's like a kind of loose concept of this other like imaginary band, where I think the front person in this band, who's like Billy Corgan's imaginary version of himself, is called Glass. I don't think Glass Theme has ever been like released anywhere, but it's basically like a very kind of energetic rock track, and Billy Corgan singing like "I'm breaking glass, I'm breaking glass, I'm breaking glass," but then he's also singing about like rock and roll or like rock music. And they followed this with a song from Machina called Heavy Metal Machine, which is like a real cool like riffy track where the refrain is "Let me die for rock and roll." I want to stop like here just to talk about a little bit about how the Smashing Pumpkins are positioning themselves when they come out and play these two songs to begin the set. Because in the 90s, sort of very cool bands like Sonic Youth and Pavement, who were like these kind of arty sort of art school kids, and like very kind of true to this kind of punk ethos, um, looked down a lot on the Smashing Pumpkins as a band who were like, Billy Corgan openly liked bands like Rush and Boston, and he was talked about how he loved prog rock and Pink Floyd. So he was like into like the history of like rock music and stadium rock and big rock bands and rock and roll. And that was a very uncool thing if you were a hipster in the 90s. But over time, I feel like it has kind of placed Smashing Pumpkins as this sort of slightly more timeless band, and like always out of step with the time that they were in, almost like in a kind of imaginary space. And coming out on stage doing these two songs at the beginning, I feel like Billy Corgan is consciously signaling this to the audience. He's saying, we are in this kind of rock star paradigm, rock and roll, heavy metal, and he's like, he's like pointing into the audience. It's like very theatrical, and he's very like unashamedly uh, about like rock music. And they follow this with Today, which is one of their biggest singles. It's off the album Siamese Dream. It's a very simple song. It's not one of my favorite Smashing Pumpkins songs, but it's very nostalgic. And they then followed that with Bullet with Butterfly Wings, which is another huge single. Like I say, the first one I ever heard by them. So these were like two huge crowd pleasers. They position themselves, then they give these two massive crowd pleasers. And then they follow that with two of the best songs from Melancholy and Infinite Sadness. Billy Corgan said, it's 30 years since the album came out. And they played Muzzle and they played 1979. And at this point, the audience had kind of settled down and stopped like pushing and trying to position themselves. And I was able to like listen to these two incredible songs from that album. And I felt so grateful to this band for having written and made these songs and for standing there playing them again like 30 years later. And I really choked up. I felt very emotional. So this is like an incredible opening to the set, and they play 1979, which I think is their biggest ever song and the one that like even people who don't like them can enjoy often. It has this, electronic drums at the beginning, and then Jimmy Chamberlain comes in on the live kit. It's such an exhilarating moment. And they go from this into two songs from their most recent album, Pentagrams and Eden or Eden. Which are real like riff heavy songs and really atmospheric. And this honestly was like a highlight of the set for me. These two songs were just incredible, and like there's no nostalgia. It doesn't have any baggage. It's just two like really great, extremely tight, well performed, heavy rock songs. And it really drove home for me how the recent album is like the songwriting is on a par with what they were doing at the start of their career on Gish. And it's a shame to me that they didn't play any of the songs from Gish. I would have loved it if they'd have played I Am One, but they played these instead and it kind of made up for it. They then played Mayonnaise, which is another kind of fan favorite, real kind of that's a very kind of teenage type song. So if you had a relationship to it back in the day, I think it's probably beautiful to hear it played today. And then they went from that into the weirdest thing. They did a cover, a sort of gothy, atmospheric cover of Take My Breath Away. Take My Breath Away, the song by Berlin from the mid 80s, which I guess, a couple of years before their band was formed. So probably like around the time that they were thinking about like making music, getting into a band. And also a song that's it's like a karaoke song. It's a song that I think it was in Top Gun. It's a song that the audience all know. The first time I've ever seen Billy Corgan walking around on stage holding a mic without playing guitar. I don't think he's super comfortable doing it. It was, though, really enjoyable. It was a fun song. And it kind of made me think about how the Smashing Pumpkins have always had It's like they've always taken what they do really seriously, but they've always had a slightly cartoonish element and a very sort of playful aspect. I will say it was a pretty good cover. The next song was 999 from the most recent album. Again, it's a really great song and it was really, really great live. And then they went from that into two kind of very epic emotional ballads from their back catalogue: Disarm from Siamese Dream, which they followed with Tonight Tonight, which is also like a huge single. Now, these were both great, but this brings me to what was my only kind of gripe about the show. They didn't have a live keyboard player with them, which they used to back in the day, and I know that they have had a woman called Katie Cole on tour with them in recent years. They didn't have anybody doing that, so I don't know where like the synthesizers, the electric drums, and the like strings were coming from. Also, a massive timpani sound in Disarm. I don't know if that was being triggered by Jimmy Chamberlin somewhere on the kit, or whether all of this was coming from a little kind of tablet that James Ehar had. Either way, there's something about having this like recorded backing track that's not being performed live that for me is like slightly at odds with the whole like rock and roll, heavy rock live spectacle of the rest of the band. So I would have liked it personally if they'd had a keyboard player doing those sounds live. All that said, it was really great to see Tonight Tonight played live, and it was followed by Cherub Rock, which is like if you know the band, you know that that's like it has a great riff. It's a very enjoyable live song, but to me, what was like more exciting than Cherub Rock by far was that they followed it with two deep cuts from Melancholy Infinite Sadness that are both super aggressive, super noisy. Jelly Belly and Bodies, like back to back. Incredible. Um, Bodies, Billy Corgan wasn't doing like the super high screaming. He's probably protecting his voice. Jelly Belly, though, like, I'm just going to show a little clip so that you can get an idea of what it's like to see Jimmy Chamberlin playing drums live. After that, they finished the show with two more like crowd pleasing songs. They did Zero, which is also a single from Melancholy Infinite Sadness, and a song that I love a great deal. I think the first song by them that I ever learned to play on the guitar. James Ehar has this great kind of atonal, weird solo towards the end of that. And in the last seconds of that solo, he kind of put his fretting hand up in the air and he picked up a kind of children's toy ray gun, like sci-fi ray gun prop, put it over the pickups on the guitar and let the noise from this toy gun finish the solo. And when I heard that, I realised, he's used that sound actually on other songs on Melancholy Infinite Sadness. But in the moment, it also kind of was that playful, silly, good-natured side of the band that I was mentioning earlier. There's something about Smashing Pumpkins that is kind of like a cartoon of a rock band, like an archetypal rock band. And they finished the set with Everlasting Gaze, which is, for my money, one of their best songs, definitely the best song on Machina. And Jack Bates was absolutely killing the bass on this song. It sounded fucking amazing. And the end of it, they dragged out, kept doing these like different rhythmic variations on the outro. So it was like such a cool way to end the set. I'm just going to say that, like, for all I talk about not liking nostalgia, it was so good to see this band live. They're such a good live band still today. Like any kind of fan from the early days, I would have liked to see the whole original lineup, but it's great to see like these three core remaining members, and the two other live musicians did a really great job. Kiki Wong is so charming, uh, and it was kind of, I felt great affection for Billy Corgan. Like, he's a very divisive guy. He's a bit of a strange guy. He has some weird opinions about things, but seeing him in his element in this band, I just thought this guy has willed this whole thing into existence. And I have like real gratitude and admiration for him for doing that. I'd like to finish this video by saying that if you like Smashing Pumpkins or if you have a relationship to some of their music, I'd love to hear from you in the comments. If you've seen them on this tour, I would love to hear from you in the comments. And if you want me to talk about any of their releases, I would happily do a video talking about it if it's something that somebody would want to hear. You know, only one person needs to hear it because like half the time only 20 people watch my videos anyway. Okay, thanks so much for listening. If you made it to the end, lots of love to you and I hope to see you again.